I've been to Williston for a bit. Used to come up here for the high school rodeos all the time as my kids are involved, and Williston's changed. I don't have to tell you that. I was a little bit lost, but it's great to be here. Man, what a beautiful facility. We got a tour today, and it's got to be the nicest one in the state that I've seen. So, you know, in agriculture, I think we're always pretty proud of our heritage, and there's, I'm sure, many operations here that are multi-generational, and we're pretty excited about, obviously, that my great-grandfather came out of Canada in 1880 before North Dakota was a state, and he ended up in Kansas, and for some ungodly reason that we don't know why, he came back to North Dakota and homesteaded in southern Burley County. We're just off the Missouri River on the east side. But I always think back to, we think we have problems. It couldn't have been nothing like living. That's a picture of actually the sod house. Living in a sod house, trying to stay warm and put food on the table. You know, we think we have it tough. We don't really. So anyway, what are the odds that you've got a doe out in front of the sign that goes into your place? So that doesn't happen every day, and that you'd actually be prepared. I was scrambling trying to get cell phone out of my pocket and actually got it pulled off. So that's what it looks like if you come to our place. Got some good friends here that have been to our place a couple of times and for various occasions, and fun to reacquaint. This is the family. You'll meet Jay on the lower right in a minute. My daughter Shanda, Renee and I in the middle, my youngest boy Jace in the back row on the right, and then Jeremy, the oldest, down front. They all went to college across the country, and then for some ungodly reason decided they wanted to come back and be involved in agriculture in North Dakota. It's great, it's exciting, and Jay will talk about it. It creates issues, you know. We're a family. Somebody stole the marbles 30 years ago, and we're still trying to figure that out. And we have these family business meetings, and sometimes you got to get over that, right? So, but it creates excitement. You guys got family coming back, many of you do. It's the number one question everywhere I go. Every time I'll get somebody coming up to me, how do you make it work? Dad won't move over. Dad won't let me do this. Dad won't let me do that. It's a problem in agriculture, and that's not my talk here tonight, but I could spend an hour on it. So anyway, I want to talk just a bit about goals before we get into this. It's important. We're a holistically managed operation. I've been through Helen Savory's holistic management. I've been through another holistic management. If you never grazed a cow, go through holistic management. We're taught in black and white, and there's nothing in life or on a farm or a ranch that's in black and white. And we got to quit thinking of it in black and white. We always want the textbook answer. I was that way myself. Things are in wholes. And once you start thinking about that, you're going to find much more success in your life and in your operation. We're multi-generational. It's a big deal. I want to turn our operation over in better shape than when I got it. It's my number one goal. I seriously want to do that, and I work for that. We're diversified in agriculture. We've generally, if you're a wheat guy, that's what you grew. If you were a cow guy, that's what you did. We've went back the other direction because we think it actually helps with our other goals, which are regenerating soil health, both on the rangeland and in our cropland, and that also includes wildlife. And then the last two are the most important, because in agriculture, we generally miss profitability. And I've been to some national meetings where the speakers stood up there and said, we've come to realize that we can't be profitable in the cow business or in agriculture. And I'm like, hey, I like what I do, but that's the dumbest thing I ever heard. You know, if we can't be profitable, why are we doing this? And so, but we tend to forget that. We tend to accept that almost. And so you've got to work at it to be profitable and start looking at things different. And then the other big thing is quality of life, because I've watched way too many people, and I guess I was there for a big chunk of my life. I watched too many people. The next quarter comes up for sale or rent, and you go get it, and you hate what you do. And honestly, I think we can have both profitability and quality of life, but you have to rethink and look at it. I wish I would have got those points when I was younger in life, but it's good to get them at some point. And we really try to work at that. It's never perfect, is it? This is, you know, Mother Nature throw things at you. Agriculture is a crazy business. But I truly believe that, and you can be much happier. And we've tried to strive for that in our family. And believe me, we're a family. We have our issues. We have things that get in the way. So I wanted to touch on that. Our operation, we run a lot of cattle, and it's all about planned grazing, short duration, high animal impact, and long recovery periods. I can tell you, this is what, if you read Lewis and Clark journals, Lewis and Clark talked about when they came to this country, grass was saddle high, beautiful and abundant. And what did we do over all these years? Season-long grazing, and we've narrowed the species, we've taken the productivity away. So basically what planned grazing is mimicking those hundreds of thousands of head of bison or buffalo, but we do it by fencing, and that's what makes land productive. It's made a huge difference in our operation, and I just want to show you a couple quick slides. We're just off the east side of the Missouri River, a lot of very sandy. When I was a kid, there wouldn't have been any grass on those hills from season-long use. That's big blue stem moving up those sandy slopes. Now people will come to the ranch and they'll say, what did you seed that with? Oh, big John Deere no-till seeder. We know that's not true. That seed bed was still there. It's all those cattle, all that animal impact. And it makes a huge difference. And then you're bringing that diversity back. That's purple prairie clover, which I've got a degree from NDSU, and my old thought would have been we need to spray that out. That's a legume that's helping to synergize that grazing land, all those various species that we have in there. And this is just, because we're moving cows every 1 to 7 days, this would be coming back to something after 74 days of rest. You had all that, just like the bison did, and then all of a sudden you've got all that soil health coming back into that native range. Much like we can do in our cropland, but we can also do it in our native range. You know, we've lost 75% of the native range in North Dakota in the last 200 years, and I get it, we're a diverse ag economy, and I'm not bad-mouthing breaking things for crops or that thing, but maybe we ought to pay attention to the last 25%. It's the part where we're going to be able to really store the carbon. If you believe in climate change or not, we can really make an impact in that, and once we get that message out there, I think it will really be beneficial to agriculture. And that's, when I come out of any pasture, if I can get it all to look like that, what we don't want is a bunch of stuff standing up. We want it on the ground, start the cycle over again. So, and then this is a huge issue as I get across the country. This water issue is huge, and we know it through stupid regulations that we see come down the pipe, and it's because we're not doing a good job of telling the public and obviously politicians what we're doing. This happens to be Long Lake Creek that runs through our ranch that ends up in the Missouri River, and I would have never thought about this 20 years ago either. You ran a lot of cattle next to it, or you farmed right up to it. And honestly, let's be honest, we put things into that watershed that maybe shouldn't have been there. We've fenced those off now. That doesn't mean we don't use it, but we'll run a lot of cattle in there, short duration, and then we've got that beauty for the rest of the year. This is prime fishing, wildlife, and beauty. And then we've got a story to tell. And that story sells, and Jay will talk about our whole agritourism venture because we bring lots and lots of folks there, and we're able to tell that story. Okay, I want to get into the principles of soil health. If you guys have been around the block at all, you know these things, but it's good for us to review. And they're basically, let's increase the plant diversity, much like I was talking about the native rangeland. We can do that in our cropland. Mother Nature wonders why we're doing these monocultures. That's why she adds weeds. She's like, what are you doing? She's used to diversity. So we want plant diversity when we can. I understand, but I think as we move farming agriculture forward, we're going to start to where we're growing more and more plants together because the benefit of it is going to be huge. Keep a living root as long as possible. We know we're in the northern plains. That's not so simple to have something growing right now. But as long as we can, let's do it. No or little soil disturbance. We've been 100% no-till for 25 years. I don't know why it took me that long to figure it out. Honestly, on those marginal soils that probably shouldn't have been broke up. We never thought it was possible to grow decent crops and to do those sorts of things. So it's been huge for us, and I know it's big in this area as well. Keep litter on the soil, and I'll explain some of that. And then this is a question I get all the time, and I'm sure it's in this room tonight. Can I build soil health? I don't want to own a cow. Yeah, you can do it, but I'll tell you, you do it 10 times faster if you get livestock on the land. This is where we need to partner then. If you don't want to own a cow and I've got cows, somehow we've got to build a relationship. We're not very good at that in agriculture. We tend to be independent and don't want to talk to the next guy. But honestly, and it needs to be a longer term contract because I got to somehow get the fencing and the water back and those sorts of things. But I think there's a huge opportunity. And I'll give you my feeling from being out around the country speaking, guys. We're starting to connect this soil health with human health, and the minute that happens, the consumer is going to demand it, and the ones that haven't got in that arena are going to be left. It's happening. I'm seeing it all over. It's slow, and I'm not going to tell you when you're not connected that you're completely out of sync, but I'm seeing that connection. The younger generation is reaching out. They want to connect. And they're wanting to buy from producers that they feel are doing the right job. From the people we bring to the ranch, and we've had all 50 states and 40 foreign countries there in jail talk about that, but we hear that all the time, and I think there's a huge opportunity for us and a public awareness thing that we can really cash into. So that's obviously my opinion, but I see this movement moving as we move along. Okay, cover crops, and we talked about them here in the social a bit. Guys, when I first got into cover crops, it was a disaster. Not very much diversity, 1 or 2 crops, and I'm like, man, what's the buzz? You know, this is quite a few years ago, and I wasn't all that impressed. And then we sat down and said, what are we really trying to do? Of course, we're a cow operation, so what's the #1 cost for cow guys in the Northern Plains? It's those winter feed costs. They kill us. And so could we plant cover crops and try to winter graze and get rid of these winter feed costs? Could we? #2, could we rebuild the soil health on really organic matter depleted soils that when I was a kid was wheat and summer fallow, black summer fallow, and some of that land's in South Dakota because that's where it blew to. You know, and you'd be sent out to stop it. It was a futile attempt. And I'm not blaming the other generations. Let's face it, government programs pushed some of those things. But could we bring them back? I wasn't sure it was possible. I thought maybe it's just worthless and we should forget about it. And #3, we love wildlife. We also have a hunting, outfitting business. Can we propagate the wildlife? I'm sick and tired of listening to people across the nation tell us how we got to get the livestock off the land. You can't have these crop production practices because it's ruining wildlife. I can tell you that's bogus. We've proven it on our place. So we've went to full season cover crops. It's where we can really build soil health, and obviously we're trying to grow some biomass to graze these cows. I'm not opposed to cover crops after a wheat crop or whatever you might be growing. I also know that we're dry just like you are. It's sketchy if I can get enough material, but it doesn't mean you can't build some soil health by doing that. But I also think there's room to interseed within a cash crop and make it work. We're planting 22 species in these full season cover crops. We're going in mid-June and planting them. Lots of legumes in there, lots of things that work really well in the winter grazing. Don't get all caught up over everybody wants my recipe for for the cover crop mix. I'm like, get a lot of diversity, find things that aren't so expensive. You know, we're paying $22 an acre on this mix, planting about 23 pounds, but there's times when I'll take something out because the price went nuts. I was telling these guys I took sunflower out. You know, we live in the prairie pothole region, and all those potholes are full. And the blackbirds have decided they don't want to leave right away in the fall anymore. And I really like sunflower in the mix, but they were attracting those blackbirds. And it wasn't so bad that they took sunflowers out, but then they were eating all the millet and everything else in the cover crop. we took the sunflower out, now they leave us alone. So, you know, you got to play with these things, and what's the proper one? Who knows? But I can tell you some years, some things really do good. Some years, some things don't do so good. One field, collards might be really good. Millet might be good over here. Mother Nature consistently shifts it all up on you and confuses you. That's why a lot of diversity is good, because you're banking on something's really going to work good one year and on one field or whatever. This is what it looks like in a decent year, and generally it'll look like obviously this is before we took the sunflower out. But the bigger issue here is I've got the soil temp there at 68 degrees. This is, if you don't take anything else home tonight, take this home, because this was the aha moment for me, and I tell this in most of the talks where I really get into soil health. Jay Fear, who I know spoke here, I think last year or something, he spent a lot of time on our place. He had a researcher from Australia at the ranch. It was 95 degrees out. This is mid-August. It looked like that. We walked out in this cover crop field, and she pulled this soil thermometer out of her pocket and stuck it in the ground. And it was 68 degrees. And I went, now I get it. And it's because of this slide. Go down to the bottom. At 70 degrees, the biologic activity is at its maximum in the soil. At 70 degrees, you're getting 100% of the moisture going to the plant. Guys, where we're always short of moisture, we're evaporating it all the time. Because in a conventional tillage field, it might have been at 140 degrees, where all the bacteria is dead and you're only getting 15% of the moisture going to the plant. That's when I finally got this. We don't need so much moisture if we utilize it right. We're not running it down the hill and we're not evaporating it. The evaporation part is really where I connected with it that day. We're keeping that soil cooler. We've got litter on the ground. And when we went through the big drought here 2 years ago, we still had some really good crops because I could go out in that litter was still there and there was good moisture underneath. I mean, obviously, if you have a 3 or 4 year drought, you're still going to have problems. It's not perfect, but it makes a huge difference. This just shows you a little bit different mix, similar. It's 20-some species in that. There you can see some of the various millets in that. And if you are going to graze it, you know, the quality stays up there. We try to keep that, you know, and I'll just say this, because a lot of guys are really promoting bale grazing, and I'm not opposed to bale grazing at all. It has its point, but I'm trying to cut costs. I don't want to have to swath it and bale it. I'd much rather graze it standing, and if we can keep the quality up some, and we've tested this through the nutritional balancer test out of Texas A&M to see if we can keep the quality up at least through the second trimester, and we're trying to go clear through the third trimester now. So just for you guys that are worried about quality, you know, I am too, but we can do that, and if you get some snow over the top, it's going to help ensure the quality. So anyway, this is, it's a little hard to read, but this is forage barley with peas, collards, and ryegrass. I'm just throwing you a couple, you know, you can do different mixes. What this is all about is us trying to take a hay crop off and then get something that grows up that we can graze later in the fall or maybe early winter. And we've had pretty good success with this. Seems to work out good. This is oat, pea, ryegrass, collards, cowpea, pearl millet, seeded actually in mid-July. And similar, again, you could hay some if you want. And this is, there was a question of me in the break there when we were having a glass of beer about perennials. And so we're messing with this because obviously if we can get the perennials so we don't have to plant this stuff every year, that'd be even better. This happens to be western wheatgrass, pubescent wheatgrass, alfalfa, sizer milk vetch, and Canada wild rye. And our goal in that is to be able to take, even though I try to never feed a bale of hay to my cow herd, I realize where I live and I've got to have a backup plan. So I try to take a cutting off from this and then graze it later. This has been a really pretty interesting mix and a good field, and we've gotten just a lot of production out of it. So I'm just throwing you out some ideas of what we've done and things that might work as you're moving forward. This is actually, we went into some old brome grass pasture. We subdued it with some glyphosate and then seeded Sizer milk vetch. Sizer milk vetch is a non-bloating legume. That gave us a heck of another option for early season grazing. If I had it to do over today, I wouldn't use the glyphosate. I'd go in there with a bunch of cattle and try to graze her down and see if I'd get by without the glyphosate. I don't know if you can or not, but I think it might work. But anyway, this is just taken off and this stuff spreads, and so we're getting it really kind of going around on that whole deal. Just another option if you've got some, you know, outdated hayland spots or whatever you might have that are non-productive. This stuff really works pretty good. This is what it looks like if we're winter grazing. And again, we try to do this all winter long. We're winter grazing right now. But when it got, we had those few days in, when was that, January? We had that 60-mile-an-hour wind and it was 50 below or whatever it was. We went in and fed some. We were just, our cover crop, we hadn't moved them yet. But the thing we do now is never bring them in. We never bring them into that watershed area. We leave them out there because it's building soil health, and I'll be able to show you that as we move along. That's actually this year. And we've had 50 inches of snow on the ranch this year. But they can graze through it. You know, where you get into trouble is when you get this freezing and thawing, which we've had a bit, and you get an ice pack, and then it causes you some issue. But generally, it's worked pretty good this year. And if we're going to graze, or if you're going to do anything with a cover crop, what we never understood, and I was the same, is you've got to leave some to feed the soil. You know, I took soils class at NDSU. Nobody ever talked about biology in the soil or below or any of those kinds of things. I'm not being critical. It was where we were in the whole science of it all. But you've got to leave something to feed the soil. That's hard for guys that think we should graze it or bale it. It's the way we're programmed. But you really have to feed that soil, and I'll show you why in a couple slides here. This just shows you after that grazing, I want the soil 100% covered, because there again, I'm not evaporating any moisture again. And then I'm infiltrating. Our infiltration has went up like that. So often we've got these compacted, not porous soils because our soil health has went to heck and we're running it down the hill. Now we're putting it in. So if we get a half-inch of rain, it's going in and I'm not evaporating. That's the key to this whole thing. And then it's also helping with weed pressure. Now it's not a perfect system. I'd love to stand up here and say, hey, I never have to spray anything again. You know, maybe that might be our goal. I've listened to enough glyphosate talks, and we could debate that if it's right or wrong, but I've heard enough that it spooks me a little, right or wrong. So I'm trying to cut it back some, but it doesn't mean I don't use it. I've got to at times, or else I don't get anything. So, you know, I think we need to just be smart, excuse me, and think about it a little. But the big thing is we're building our soil biology back, and we're seeing our organic matter going back like this again. I gave a talk like this in the Red River Valley, way out of my comfort zone. I'm like, my God, they got 50 feet of topsoil. You know, Western North Dakota guy going over there, they're going to crucify me. But honestly, I was talking to the NDSU soil specialist there, and he said, are you aware that their organic matter's dropping to 1% to 3% in places? And I'm like, my God, I didn't know we could screw that up. Honestly. And I'm like, holy smokes. And they've got the same issue in spots, probably not everywhere, but they have. And again, I'm not trying to badmouth anybody's management, but we've taken it for granted so long that we forgot about soil biology and building it back, and that organic matter slipping away from us. And then we just no-till right into this. If you want a cash crop on it or whatever you might want to do, right into it. We've never had any trouble with the trash, and works really well. This is be a cash crop of corn coming back in. You can obviously still see the cow patties out there. If you've got an active biology in that soil, how quick that residue will be degraded is amazing to me. And you can mess with the CN ratio to slow that down, and I don't have time to go into that today. But this is the other issue that I really want to spend a couple minutes on. This is the highest test Burley County's ever had for total soil biology. And I'm not trying to butter myself up, but it got me excited. And why is that? It's from all those cattle on the land and all that diversity in that cover crop. And it built the biology. And the thing is, the fungi is one of the bigger things in that to helping that biology and that soil become functional, and that was going off the wall as well. You know, we don't always hit that. You know, some of the tests this year, we've had some up in the 4,000s. Sometimes it falls off. Again, Mother Nature plays with you. If I ever say I'm an expert at that, kick me out. I'll never be. But I'm constantly trying to figure this out and move up that hill. But what that's telling me is we're moving in the right direction. I'm not, you know, a soil scientist. It tells me we're moving right. And this is just, we did something on our place on some really degraded sandy land. And this was clear back in 2011, 2012. What we did was we had taken a cover crop and then we'd put corn on it and we tested the biology, and that we doubled it. And I'm like, there's something to this. All that diversity, getting the livestock on the land, and all of a sudden you start seeing that biology come back. This is Mr. Fear that I talked about, and we do tests on our place every fall, seeing what's happening with the biology and trying to figure it out, trying to get smarter. And I was told that in that sandier land by some of the soil specialists, they said you'll have a real hard time bringing worms back in because it's too abrasive. And then last fall, look at, I don't know if you can see that way in the back, but that is covered with worms. And the porousness of that soil, that's from all those cover crops. That allows that moisture to go into the soil. If I compared that to a traditional soil that's been in traditional tillage, it would be blocked with no pores. And that's the thing, guys, that's where we need to get to in this soil health. And I get it. What works on my place won't necessarily work on yours, but the principles are the same. And when you start to see these things, thank you, you start to get fired up that you're moving the thing in the right direction, bringing it back to where we were when Lewis and Clark were here before we, you know, did our practices that we thought were right, but maybe weren't all good all the time. I'll speed through some of this, but as we look at this, and this is a little wordy, but it's using the Solvita test that gives you credit for the biology in the soil, which we're growing our own fertilizer then in the soil. And this was clear back on some of the earlier years we did it, and the agronomist told me they thought I could cut fertilizer by 50% on these 2,200 pound sunflowers. I was still a skeptic. I only cut it by 25% and yet grew 2,200 pound sunflowers, which was really high for us. And then this is just, we took leaf analysis on some crops. They were identical, fertilizing by NDSU normal recommendations, and then no fertilizer by giving credit for the biology. Statistically identical. And we were growing either on sunflowers or corn, we were growing the same yield by saving all those dollars. So it's not a perfect world, and Mother Nature shifts it up and we can't always do it, but the goal is to never have to fertilize again. Maybe you cut it 25, maybe you can cut it 50. Some years, maybe you can cut it 100. But that's where you start to find profitability. If we're building soil health back and we're finding profitability, that's the big deal. And I'm just about to the end here, but I wanted to me this is a big deal. And I realize this involves cows again, but Jay Fear brought the state health department to our ranch. And he said he was a big NRCS guys, and they'd spent a lot of money building concrete berms and everything to keep the manure and the runoff out of the watershed. And he said, on this place, we're going to call it a biological ag waste system, a cool term for common sense. We're just keeping the cows out on the cropland, building biology back in the soil, never putting any of that into the watershed, and then we can tell that story. Those health guys were excited. And the bad flap agriculture's taken. Perception, in my opinion, becomes reality. And I can tell you, people think agriculture is broken. I hear this everywhere I go and from a lot of the people that come. You're poisoning the watersheds, you're ruining the atmosphere, you beat your animals, whatever it might be. And I know better than that, but we're not doing a good job of telling that. And that's, Jay will get into more of this, but we need to tell that story. This was a bus group that was there, and that's Jay on the left talking to them. And then we do a fair amount of soil health tours at the ranch, and this is another one. But we've got to spread that message because we're doing a lot of things right, and as we move into this soil health, and remember I said soil health is going to connect to human health, and it's going to come fairly quickly. I think the opportunity for agriculture is going to be huge, but not everybody will fit into that game. But there's going to be niches that can really make a difference. Now, you know, it's not always perfect, but there are many that aren't going to be ready for that, and they're going to be left behind because it's why food co-ops are successful right now. People are wanting to connect to agriculture again. Now, right or wrong, it's just like the GMO debate. Right or wrong, and I'm not going to, I get the science, I'm not going to debate it, but if the consumer says they don't want it, we're going to lose. Like it or not, we're going to lose. Because they'll get it somewhere else. We're in the world, we heard from the earlier speakers, we're in a world market. So we've got to pay attention to that, tell the story, make sure they're hearing the right thing. You know, we've got a news system that's not working to our benefit at all, and so we've got to work harder to bring that along. I appreciate it. I'm kind of at the end. This is my email. If you've got any questions outside of what you might ask here today, you can also go to blacklegranch.com. RollingPlainsAdventures.com is our hunting outfitting business as well. I really appreciate being here, but I'm open if you want to throw something at me, pin me down, go for it.
Yeah, you finished early, so we have like 10 minutes for questions.
Sure, okay. You scared me when you held up that 10-minute thing, so I'm used to going over and my wife will give me hell real fast, so.
Are you calving out in the pasture on the fields then, or do you bring them in for calving?
The question is, where are we calving and what do we do? We changed our calving 20 years ago to May and June. We calve in the hills now. The #1 best economic decision we ever made. We used to calve in barns. It used to be fun when I was younger, bringing all those heifers in or calving cows in a slop. We lost 100 calves to scours one year, and the boys were still off in school, and my dad had passed away. Our hired man, been with us for 15 years, had died, and I said, I either got to do something different or I'm going to quit, because I don't think this is that much fun anymore. That quality of life, it went to hell on me. So we changed that, and yeah, the calves are smaller, but we have way more opportunities. Jay will talk a little about it. When do the deer fawn in this country? It's not in the middle of the winter. And again, we're trying to use nature to our benefit. It's not always perfect, but I'll remind you, it was the #1 best economic decision I think I ever made, and the hardest, because I went, you know, I'm a graduate at NDSU. I went to the animal science department, and I said, give me all the information you have on later calving, late spring, early summer. I got a half a page. It's not something that's looked at. We tend to look at the same things over and over and over. I'm not trying to be critical, but honestly. And so I honestly had to beat my, you know, because I was completely different than anybody around me. And peer pressure's hard. And I had to beat my head against the wall. I'm serious. And I finally said, I either got to do this or quit. And I finally pulled the plug, and I'm like, my God, why was that so hard, you know? No, we laugh, don't we? But it's the way agriculture is. We're kind of cruel. I always tell this story to people, young people especially. How, you know, God, I changed something, and now everybody's telling me how bad I am. I said, well, you got to stay out of the bars and the restaurants. You got to drink at home. Other questions? Yes, ma'am.
So do you see a difference in the nutrition value of your grazing cover crops in the winter versus if you were to have hayed them? Is there much difference in the
Right.
value?
The question is there a difference in the nutritional value if you would have hayed the cover crops compared to grazing? Well, I'm sure I could bump the nutrition by haying, but I'm going to have all those costs. So like I said, we test it, and I've never yet tested where I wasn't along. I don't care if I put a bunch of weight on those cows when they're grazing, but I don't want to lose a bunch. And we've been able to keep them right at a maintenance level. Now, if we get some snow and it covers some of that, it's actually better because it'll save the nutrition a little. If it's just a windy year with no snow, it's going to drop some. The thing is, it's easy to supplement out there, either through cubes cake or alfalfa hay out there. We don't ever bring those cows in anymore unless we need to work them for something. We try to keep them on the land, building the biology in the soil, giving the consumer, so we can tell the story that we're not in the watershed anymore. Where are most of our ranches or farms built? On a watershed, and ours was no different. A creek ran right through the corral. I never thought about that for all those years. And then one day, there was a guy from the government there, and we're talking about it, and he said, do you actually feed cows on this creek? Oh no, they must have got out. I'd never really thought about it, and then I'm like, God, that is a perception, right or wrong, that's not a good thing. We need to pay attention a little bit. So, and we're all guilty of that a little bit, and we have a tendency to think, by God, we're agriculture, you're gonna like it. And we're all that way a little bit, but I think we've got to pay attention to what the consumer says, because ultimately, they're going to decide if they want to buy from us or not. And they'll make the choice. And when the consumer decides that soil health is make or break, we better be on the bandwagon. At NCBA in San Antonio, when you talk to, I sat down with the sustainability people from McDonald's. They are gung-ho. Right or wrong, sometimes they need a little help on what sustainability is, but that they're in that arena is great. What's concerning is make sure they don't go too far in the wrong direction, that we're there helping them along so we're all on the same page. But, we were commending them for not having a Beyond Beef burger, and he quickly stopped us and said, we will be that way until the consumer demands it. So he said, it's probably only a matter of time. And I'm like, dang, I thought you were going to be true, But I get it. They're in business. Other questions? Yes, sir.
Just remember, McDonald's is 100% American beef raised in Brazil.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, well.
Fair truth in advertising ad.
Yeah, well, we all know there's, it's all over the place, isn't it? We can debate all those things all day long, unfortunately. And so, yes, sir.
What do you do for water when you're fencing all that? Because I know back when my dad used to have cattle years ago, we had a calved. He got tired of, like you did,
Yeah.
he calved in May. And his calves are always large in the fall because we had water, plenty available.
Right.
24 hours a day.
Yeah. The question was, what do we do for water? In the summer system, we've got pipeline run everywhere now. And there's good cost share programs, and we've utilized a few of them. In the winter, we're still working on that. We've run, because, you've got to put things 8 foot deep. Let's realize it's not like Texas. And so we can't go everywhere, but we've moved some around, and we're better. And we've made some of these cows walk a mile or so. I do know if we keep those calves on those cows, and we've done that a little longer, and graze the cover crops, it works good. And if we're making those cows walk a mile, you get one of those storms, Those calves don't go to water, and then they dehydrate, and then you get pneumonia and you get things. So we've learned that, you know. Somebody asked me the other day, when's the best time to wean? I said, tell me what the weather's going to do, I'll tell you. Because we've done it all over, and it's so dependent on Mother Nature. You guys all know that. The agriculture is so dependent on Mother Nature. So anything else? If not, I'm going to get Jay up here. So thanks so much. I appreciate it.